What if the biggest system controlling your life isn't something you chose, voted for, or even noticed? Every major decision you make, where you live, what you study, how you work, even how you survive, may be shaped by an economic structure quietly guiding your choices. So the real question is, are we truly independent or simply living inside a system built on dependency? When people hear the word feudalism, they imagine medieval castles, kings, and peasants working the land. It feels distant and irrelevant to modern life, like something buried in textbooks and historical documentaries. But feudalism was never really about swords or crowns. At its core, it was about control over essential resources. In medieval Europe, land produced everything that mattered: food, shelter, and protection. Whoever controlled land controlled survival. If you didn't own land, your options were limited, regardless of how hard you worked. People exchanged labor for security and paid rent for access to life itself. The system created stability, but it also created dependency, and that dependency shaped not just economics, but identity, hierarchy, and the boundaries of possibility. What makes this important is not that feudalism existed, but why it lasted so long. It minimized uncertainty and reduced chaos in a world with limited infrastructure and mobility. Everyone understood their role. Ownership was concentrated, mobility was limited, and stability mattered more than freedom. The system did not collapse because it was unfair. It collapsed because something more powerful replaced it. Industrialization transformed the economic structure entirely. Factories replaced farms, cities replaced estates, and wages replaced lifelong obligations. For the first time in history, people could earn income without owning the resource that produced wealth. That shift fundamentally altered the relationship between effort and survival. This shift created something historically rare: a growing middle class with rising living standards and increasing economic mobility. During the 19th and 20th centuries, productivity growth translated into higher wages across many industrial economies. Home ownership expanded, savings became achievable, labor gained bargaining power. People began to believe that economic freedom was permanent. For many, upward mobility no longer felt like an exception, but an expectation. But here is the part most narratives ignore. Ownership never disappeared. It simply changed form, quietly repositioning itself at the center of economic power. Land evolved into property markets. Production evolved into corporations. Infrastructure evolved into financial assets. Economic power moved from physical resources into financial systems. Over time, ownership began concentrating again, not through conquest or force, but through market dynamics and incentives. Capital flowed toward those who already controlled appreciating assets. Assets began growing faster than wages. Those who owned property or financial investments accumulated wealth automatically, while those relying only on income struggled to keep pace. The system quietly shifted from rewarding labor to rewarding ownership. And because the shift was gradual, it felt less like a rupture and more like a natural progression. You can see this transformation in everyday life. Housing is no longer just shelter. It is an investment asset and a vehicle for capital growth. Education is no longer simply preparation. It is financed through long-term debt that follows graduates for decades. Healthcare is purchased through ongoing payment structures rather than secured outright. Even digital services now operate on subscriptions. You rarely own what you use. You pay for access. It feels convenient and modern, but it changes the relationship between individuals and economic security. Access replaces control, and flexibility replaces permanence. And here is where the structure becomes clearer. When income cannot keep up with rising costs, debt fills the gap. Global debt has reached record levels, exceeding 3 times global economic output. Household debt continues expanding, with mortgages and student loans shaping financial decisions for decades. Debt allows access to opportunity, but it also commits future labor to past costs. It ensures that tomorrow's work pays for yesterday's access. Over time, this creates a system where participation depends less on savings and more on leverage.
A medieval farmer owed labor to land he did not own. A modern worker owes labor to financial obligations already signed. The vocabulary has changed, but the mechanism creates a similar form of dependence. What makes this system powerful is that it rarely feels restrictive. You can change jobs, move cities, and pursue opportunity. You appear free, yet financial obligations follow wherever you go. Mispayments and access to stability disappears. The system operates not through force, but through structure. Its discipline is embedded in contracts rather than commands. This becomes even more visible during economic crises. When markets face instability, the primary goal is restoring financial stability quickly. Asset values are stabilized, credit systems are protected, and economic confidence is preserved. Meanwhile, individuals adjust, absorb losses, and rebuild gradually. This is not a conspiracy, it is structural logic. The system protects what it depends on most. Ownership anchors stability, while participation carries risk. The architecture of intervention often reveals the priorities built into the system itself. This dynamic helps explain a modern paradox. People are more productive than ever, yet many feel economically insecure. They earn income but struggle to build lasting stability. They sense that effort alone no longer guarantees progress. Economic research shows rising wealth concentration in many advanced economies, where a relatively small share of households controls a large portion of total assets. Because assets generate compounding returns, while wages do not, the gap between ownership and labor naturally expands over time. Inequality becomes less about individual effort and more about structural position. History shows that economic systems remain stable when ownership expands and mobility increases. Industrial capitalism succeeded because it allowed more people to accumulate assets and build security. Broad participation in ownership strengthened social stability and reduced economic dependency. As more individuals gained access to property and financial resources, the relationship between effort and reward appeared more predictable. But when ownership becomes concentrated again, dependency gradually returns, not through force, but through prices. Access becomes conditional, stability becomes temporary. The patterns become visible, and the choices you make become more intentional. If this video gave you a new perspective, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to keep exploring how money, power, and history quietly shape our lives, join us as we uncover the forces shaping the world around you. Because the deeper you look, the more you discover.